Alrighty, in this video, we're going to start off by doing a couple things. One thing in the stores, in the App Store, the app itself is going to get a view from the server, and that view is going to contain global unchanging data, such as the sets, the game sets that are available to play with. So I'm going to start off with importing at the top from RxJS, and I'm going to import behavior subject, which I've already have imported. I didn't notice that. And I'm going to say const default view equals object with the sets array. And the sets array, let's just do, I don't know, ID 1ED name first edition and 2ED 3ED second third, and then I don't know, blah stuff and things, because in our game setup component we're going to need to be able to have access to the currently available sets. Then how about above our dialogues, I'm going to say this view money equals new behavior subject, and I'm going to pass in our default view. And so now we'll be able to subscribe to that and get information about what sets are currently available. The next thing I'm going to do is something I forgot in the last video, and that is for our game. Let's jump back into our game and change the step to step setup, which will, of course, make it so our setup appears. I actually want to constrain the size of the chat to 200 pixels high. So I'm going to jump into our game.scss file, and then after we style the notice, I'm going to go ahead and add some additional styles that will, or a style for the chat by saying c-chat, and I'm going to say flex is none, so it won't grow and it won't shrink, and then height is 200 pixels. So that'll take the chat and make it only 200 pixels, which is what I want. But with that change to the CSS and this change to the app, we are ready to start working on our game setup. So if we go into the game setup component, currently we're just returning this section. Let's preemptively separate this out into multiple lines, because we're going to need that eventually. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to walk down, I'm going to start off by stubbing out a function at the bottom. We're going to have a stateless component down here, function setList, which will accept sets and toggle set. And we'll just return, I don't know, p sets. Don't care yet. And then we're just going to walk down the this component. It's not particularly long, so we'll just go line by line. So the first thing is we need a constructor with props, and then super props. And then the things that this component can do is set the score limit, toggle a set on or off, and start the game. So let's start off with this set score limit, which is going to accept an event. And what I'm going to do is, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say if not this props op set options can return. Then I'm going to say this request a.game_set_options, and I'm going to pass in, first of all, our game ID. Our game ID is simply this.state. Whoops, our opset options is actually state, not props. This.state game.id. And then for the options that we're setting, we're going to copy the options that are not going to change, which is going to be in this state game options, followed by our new option, which is going to be score limit, which is going to be set to, let's do a parse int of e.target.value. So our set score limit is going to be in a select box, and it's going to be an event that's going to be dispatched every time that select box is changed. And then all we're going to do, make sure that we can set the options, and if we can, we're going to set the options, and we're going to copy the old options, and then add the new score limit. E-target value will be the value of the select box from the event. Next up, let's do this toggle set. This toggle set will toggle a set on or off. And I'm going to say if not this state op set options can, then return. Then I'm going to say this request a game set options, passing in this state game ID. And then for the options, we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to say we're going to copy the existing this state game options. And then we're also going to set the sets. And the sets is going to be, the new sets are going to be dependent on if the set was previously selected or not. So I'm actually going to break this out a little bit. I'm gonna do this up here. I'm going to say const new sets equals set.isSelected. Then I'm going to do a ternary. And I'm going to say this state game options sets filter set ID goes into set ID does not equal set.id. Otherwise, we're going to say this state game options set concat set.id. I should have totally deconstructed the, I'm going to do that. This is too ugly. I'm going to say op set options followed by game colon options comma ID equals this.state. And this will allow me to remove all the this.states from this function. Those this.states is really, really annoying. That looks a whole lot better, in my opinion. So you see, all I did was I deconstructed the this.state, and now our code looks better. So then I can say sets is new sets. So what's going on here is basically we're saying if the set was previously selected, then we want to filter it out of the set ID list. Remember, this options.sets corresponds to our store's games default view, which has a list of set IDs that are being used for the current game. These IDs correlate to the app set IDs that we have here. So when we toggle a set, all we have to do is either filter it out of the old sets or add it to the old sets. And that's it. So with that, the last operation we have to perform is this underscore start game. And start game is, because it's going to be a form, we're going to accept an event. We're going to say e.prevent default, because start game will happen when we submit the form, the HTML form that we're going to be wrapping around. Then I'm going to say, I'm going to use deconstructing. Op start can, or I'm just going to do op start, and then game colon ID equals this state. If not, op start can return. Otherwise, this request a.game_start_id. And there we go. Those are all of the callbacks we'll need. And then you can add additional callbacks if you wanted to. If you wanted to have more options, more things that you can change about a game, you could certainly go in and add different things. But these callbacks are going to be invoked directly from the HTML form elements. So take one last look at the constructor. And now let's go ahead and do our component will mount. So component will mount. And of course here, all we do is subscribe to a bunch of stuff. So I'm going to say const stores colon app colon game, or comma game, equals this context. And then we'll subscribe to app.view money.map, v goes into v.sets, followed by sets goes into this set state sets. So what we're doing is we're extracting out from the app view, we're extracting out what sets are available to the game. Then we'll subscribe to game.view. Game goes into this set state game. After that, we'll subscribe to game op set options money. And then op set options goes into this dot set state op set options. And then we'll subscribe to game.start money, or sorry, dot op start money. Op start goes into this set state op start. And those are the values that we will be subscribing to. Those are the observables that we will be having our data depend on. Next up, let's do our render method. Let's go ahead and deconstruct a bunch of stuff. Let's grab our sets. Let's grab our game options. Let's grab our op set options, and let's grab our op start, all from our state. Then I'm going to convert the sets and the option set, so the sets that are available and the sets that are selected, into a new data structure that'll combine the two. I'm going to say const set list equals sets.map set goes into, and then I'm going to use a single line lambda, which means I have to that'll return an object, which means I have to wrap it in parentheses. Otherwise, it'll interpret these curlies not as a JSON object, but as a statement, which wouldn't make any sense, and things will blow up and explode, and it wouldn't be good. So what we're going to do is we're going to map it to a new data structure that'll have an ID of set.id, a name of set.name, but then an is selected of options. Oops, that's not how you spell options. Options sets includes set.id. Next up, I'm going to do const disabled equals not op set options can, or op set options in progress, or op start in progress. So the disabled Boolean indicates whether or not the form is enabled or not. So if we can't set the options, or the set options operation is in flight, or we're starting the game, then we'll disable the form. Then I'm going to say const error equals op start.error or op set options.error. So this will either be undefined, or it'll be the op start error, or if that doesn't exist but this does, it'll be this error. Now we can write our markup. All right, this is going to be super exciting. All right, section class name equals, and I'm going to open up the curlies with the template string, c-game-settings, and then in the template string, I'm going to say, if we're disabled, write the disabled out. If we're not disabled, write enabled out. You'll notice that this the syntax highlighting is having some emotional issues with this word. This word should be colored like that, but it's not. So just bear that in mind, that this is a variable, not a part of a string. Or rather, this is an expression, not a string. All right, let's start with our h1, which will simply be game options, followed by not error null, otherwise span class name of error span. So if there's an error, we'll render it out in the header. If not, we'll just leave it be. Then we'll do a form with the class name of body. And in this form, we will do a div class name equals form row with the label of score limit, colon. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to open up a select box. Now, the value is going to be set to options.scoreLimit. The onChange is going to be this setScoreLimit, and the disabled is going to be disabled. For the values, we're going to use Lodash to produce an array of numbers. So I'm going to open up curlies, and I'm going to do _.range, followed by 4 to, I don't know, 50. Why not? .map. I goes into, and then we're going to write a option. The option will have a value of I, a key of I, and a text of I. So this will render out 50 minus 4 option elements into our select box. Then let's do our sets. So I'm going to do div class name equals form row. And we're going to say label sets and label. And then we're just going to do set list. Remember our set list guy at the bottom? Ooh, I already had a render method. I'm going to delete you. We have our set list at the bottom. And then our set list needs our sets, which is going to be sets equals set list. Remember, our set list variable is our new data structure that combines the available sets with the selected sets. Then the toggle set is simply going to be this _ toggle set. So we're passing that event down so that the set list can set sets. That's saying sets a lot. It's starting to sound like not a real word. Anyway, so next up, let's go ahead and write our start game button. Start game button is pretty straightforward. It's simply a button with the class name of mbutton start-game and good. The on click is going to be this _ start game, and the disabled is going to be disabled. Then the text is simply going to be start game. All right, so in the interest of finishing off all the markup in this video, I'm going to scroll down to set list and actually implement it. So we're going to return a UL with the class name of sets list. Remember those parentheses. Remember, I know I've said this multiple times. You're probably used to it by now, but remember when you drop down to a new line in a return statement, include the parentheses. Then inside the UL, we're going to say sets.map, set goes into, and we're going to say li end li. The li will have a key of set.id, a class name of set.isSelected question mark is dash selected followed by null. Come on, where are you? An on click of anonymous function that says toggle set, and then the text of the li will be set.name. All right, so let's go ahead and I'm going to scroll through this file one more time. Then we're going to take a look at it, see if the markup is rendering properly, and then we will end this video. So let's scroll down the game setup. So the game setup is just kind of an annoying sort of component to do. It's just a form. It's basically a CRUD form, but you could definitely extend this to do any sort of CRUD operations, or you could use form helpers in the form, no pun intended, of special React modules you can grab off NPM or GitHub that allow you to do like inbuilt validation and other fancy, super cool stuff. But it's really important to know how to do this stuff yourself without relying on a module. So that's why we put it in here, even though it's a small form. All right, let's see if it rendered out correctly. And it appears to have worked. We have our start game, which is unfortunately not selected because we're not logged in. See, everything's disabled. But if I log into join game, now the start game button is enabled. Now let's look at our sets to see if our sets toggle correctly. So if I click on this, these sets, it doesn't appear to be toggling. We'll take a... Oh, the reason it's not toggling, I bet you, is because in our console, we are setting the game options, but the response is not changing the game options. So the form, no matter what we try to do, won't have any effect on anything. But you know what? That's fine. Because in the case of the server, we'll send the options to the server, and then the server will then send back the new options, and then the form will update. The fact that the form is not updating right now as I try to change things is actually how it's supposed to behave the way it's currently implemented. But with that, that is going to wrap up the markup for our game setup component. And with that, we'll see you guys in the next video.